host, the best and fastest researcher in the West. Camille, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Busy at work right now, but we're here now. We're doing a podcast, and we're going to be talking about minimum wage, which is
Hey, at least
all
you have a job.
that's true, and it's not minimum wage, so this law doesn't affect me. But it is the hot button issue right now. I feel like this week everyone's talking about it because it did go into effect April 1st. This new law requiring $20 an hour. We're going to do our best to kind of go through the confusion, what's going on. I mean, there's still a lot of confusion. I don't think a lot of people are even sure what's going on, really, who's required of it. Maybe talk a little bit about Panera Gate, what the sort of ramifications to the market are in restaurants and stuff like that. But before we begin, I'm going to tell a story. And I think I saw this story time. Anecdotal story time, because there's nothing better to prove your argument than anecdotal story time. So it was, I think, a couple weeks ago, my wife and I were on our way back from Costco, weekday night. You know, you're already at Costco. It takes forever to get through Costco, parking and whatever. So we're like, oh, we're not going to make dinner. Let's just stop at In-N-Out. And so we're like, In-N-Out's fast. It's cheap. We'll just go to In-N-Out. Go through. We all order the same thing as always. And I look at the receipt, and all of a sudden I realize the number that's in my head for what we always order is a little bit more. All of a sudden it's $4 or $5 more than what it was.
That's
when
a
we
lot
usually
more
go.
for two people.
That's a lot more. So what was usually $16, $16, $17 went up to $22. And I go, oh, that's interesting. And we hadn't even really ordered all the normal stuff we get. I think I even downgraded. Usually I get a shake, but then I looked up that their shake is like 800 calories. I mean, it's delicious. Their shake, believe me, just a small shake. But then I looked
We're
up
a health
how much
podcast now.
we could be a hot health podcast, just giving our, unsupported advice about health. We are not professionals. But yeah, I looked it up and I was like, 800 calories. That's like 2 meals. It's delicious. I gave it up anyway. I looked at the receipt and I go, wow, $22 now to go to In-N-Out when it used to be around $16, $17 for 2 people. And that includes even a puppy patty for our dog Winnie. So, that's my anecdotal story. I don't know if anyone else out there who is watching right now has a same kind of story. If they want to put that in the chat, that they've noticed things have been going up. But that's going to be like the theme of this episode tonight, is how is the fast food industry reacting to it? Before we get started, do you have any anecdotal story time about fast food prices?
Thoughts. Okay. But I actually, now you mentioned Costco. My sister texted today. We have a family group text, and she texted. I know if Costco's not fast food, but she said, I just did my usual shopping at Costco. She's very good at her budget. Like, she has her budget. She has her grocery list. She meal plans. I'm not like that. Like, she's like super mom, super wife. And she's like, I went and did my Costco shopping today. It cost twice as much. But now I do wonder, like, their food court prices. Historically, their hot dog is like, people like joke like it survives inflation. The hot dog drink combo, I think, has been $1.49 or $1.50 forever. And now I'm starting to wonder, how soon does that go up? Because while they're not technically fast food workers, like, they're going to start to demand higher wages. It's going to happen. The people work, and so now you got me thinking about that. But I have thoughts. You always ask me if I have thoughts before we go into an episode. And this issue, this bill, Panera Gate, all this stuff, I think you and I, as soon as this information started to come out, I think we both posted about it, and certainly other people were posting about it, Republicans saying, see, this is bad, this is not good. And often I know we're guilty of, we hear a blurb about a bill and we jump on it and we post something, and then more information comes out over the week. And then we're kind of embarrassed when it's like, actually, that bill didn't mean that at all. And it didn't say those words, and it said this, and this is what it meant. And we kind of have to go back on our well, we were wrong. That bill, I mean, that doesn't always happen, but it happens often enough where we jump on it and we get all riled up. Like, what is this? And make posts about it, and then we're like, oh, that didn't mean that at all. And so I definitely jumped on this bill when we started to hear like the Panera thing. I was definitely one to, oh my gosh, what is going on here? And even as I was posting about it, I was thinking, is this going to be one of those things where in a few days, it's like more information comes out and I'm going to have to be like, okay, that's not what it meant. Here's what happened. No, this gets wilder and more bizarre every single day. Like new information has, which we're obviously going to go over all of it. And I'm just like, this is a bill that they're going to, like, in 30 years, they're going to write some crazy conspiracy theory movie about, we're going to like, they're going to be like, there was this underground bunker at the Capitol, and this, and this, and like Nicolas Cage will be 90 years old, but he'll still be the star of the movie. And like, that's how this is. Seriously, it's that weird.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of questions about how it came about. We're going to watch a video with some people who had questions about how it came about, NDAs, how they were involved. Obviously, Panera Gate, which was the big thing, is with Gavin Newsom. Why was Panera initially exempt from it after he was found that he took enormous contributions from the owner of Panera, owner of Panera, which to a lot of people, I mean, yeah, you see the connection, you go, well, it makes sense. You contribute, you get an exemption. Yeah, this bill gets weird, and this might be an issue of like states like California, Oregon, and Washington, the whole West Coast basically, loves to pass stuff and figure it out later and see if it works. Just last week, we saw that the governor of Oregon had signed a law recriminalizing certain drugs, because that was Oregon's big thing was, oh, we've decriminalized all drugs. But in theory, they just made it sound like it was a great idea. But then in practice, they saw how bad it got, and now they're actually going back on it and changing their minds. I don't know if that'll happen here. I think the unions, again, are too strong. They'll fight for this tooth and nail. And one thing we always say is follow the money, and 9 times out of 10, there's a union behind it, because the union always benefits. And yeah, so we'll take a look at it now. There's a lot to get to today. We have a lot of articles, a lot of data and stuff like that. But let's start with the bill itself. So this is AB number 1228, written by Chris Holden. What do we know about Chris Holden is that he is termed out, right? He is gone after this term. So
yeah. So he's been in politics for a very long time. He was city council in Pasadena. He's done a lot. Like, yeah.
And usually you see a lot of these crazy, wacky bills come through people who are termed out. Think of a couple of years ago, Dr. Richard Pan. When
I knew you were going there. Sorry.
I think Dr. Richard, well, he might be the best example, because he was part of that whole, what did they call him, the vaccine group or something, like him, Scott Wiener, like the lefties, Akilah Weber or whatever, the lefty of the lefties.
Us moms like that were sorry, I didn't mean moms don't care, but us moms that were really paying attention. SB 277 back in 2015, we were like,
he was also a part of that.
Get rid of him. Yeah.
I think he's actually also running to be mayor of Sacramento. So my apologies to Sacramento in advance. I feel bad for you that Richard Pan might be your mayor. But yeah, this is kind of like the trend of assembly members or state senators who are about to be termed out. They kind of like go ahead and take the craziest bills, and they're like, I'm going to introduce it. I'll author it. I don't have to worry about re-election. So what the heck do I care?
Yeah.
I mean, it does hurt their chances if they're running somewhere else, which he's running for county supervisor now. So that might hurt him. But anyway, I have some highlights here. And for those of you who don't know what my day job is, I am an attorney.
You are?
I don't know. I think so. Sometimes I think I'm an attorney. I'm an attorney by day, and I read these bills, and sometimes I read these bills, and I'm like, what the heck does any of this mean? Because you read a lot of law, and you try and figure it out, and you try and parse it apart. This law is pretty convoluted and leaves, from an attorney standpoint, it leaves a lot of gaps And I can see where like labor attorneys and restaurant attorney, like people who represent restaurants, can look at this and go, I have a lot of questions and maybe it doesn't apply to us. I can argue it doesn't apply to us. Um, one part says this bill would prohibit any city, county, or city and county from enacting or enforcing any ordinance or regulation applicable to fast food restaurant employees that sets the amount of wages or salary for fast food restaurant employees except as provided. By imposing additional requirements on local agencies, the bill would impose a state mandated local program. Goes on to say, for purposes of this part, national fast food chain means a set of limited service restaurants consisting of more than 60 establishments nationally that share a common brand or that are characterized by standardized options for decor, marketing, packaging, products, and services, and which are primarily engaged in providing food and beverages for immediate consumption on or off premises, where patrons generally order or select items and pay before consuming, with limited or no table service. For purposes of the definitions in this part, limited service restaurant includes but is not limited to an establishment with the North American Industry Classification System Code 722513. Okay, so that part I think is kind of self-explanatory. From that, you go.
Yeah, I feel like I mostly understood it. So me,
Yeah,
I am not an attorney by day or night. So
it's a chain, basically. Burger King, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, all that stuff. That they're a national brand. They have the same decor, marketing, all that stuff. That would be a fast food restaurant. Fast food restaurants shall not include an establishment that on September 15th, 2023 operates a bakery that produces for sale on the establishment's premises bread as defined under Part 136 of Subchapter B of Chapter 1 of Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, so long as it continues to operate such a bakery. This exemption applies only where the establishment produces for sale bread as a standalone menu item and does not apply if the bread is available for sale solely as part of another menu item.
That is where it gets so weird.
So, for those who are not familiar, this was the part that news organizations jumped on because places like Panera operate a bakery. They have a bakery, they make bread, and they sell bread. You can walk into a Panera and buy bread. So even though they meet the classifications of the previous part I just read about being a fast food restaurant, they have a national brand, they're all the same, they have the same marketing, packaging, all that stuff. If you operate a bakery and sell bread before or on September 15th, 2023. So this, you can't run out and just like open a bakery.
Right.
You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to open a bakery right now. They were at least smart enough to be like, if we leave this too wide open, everyone in the world is going to start opening bakeries and start selling bread.
Or selling bread. Which I have a story about that, but finish what you're saying because I want to add something.
Yeah, so this is the clause that got Newsom in trouble because of the Panera connection between the owner and the contributions he received. It's odd. It's odd that there was a specific carve out for a bakery such as this. It almost looks like if you describe to someone and said, okay, you're trying to describe Panera Bread, but you don't remember the name. You're like, well, it's kind of like a fast food place. You go in for lunch. They have a whole bunch of them. It's a national brand. And they sell bread and like they're known for their bread. Like people will go, oh, it's Panera. So if you read this definition and you go, it's a fast food restaurant that operates a bakery and sells bread, the first person you think of is Panera. I can't think of any other fast food restaurant that really does it. I mean, Jersey Mike's technically bakes their bread.
So Corner Bakery is similar to Panera.
So Corner Bakery is another one, but like Panera is the biggest one. So it just seems odd.
I've been in Panera twice in my life, and I only ate there one of those times, and I thought they were so disgusting. So I'm not actually very familiar with them.
Hot take. I hate Panera bread. I think it's disgusting. So
apparently we agree there. Panera's disgusting.
If anyone
according to this podcast. So Panera will not be
Panera will not be sponsoring this podcast.
They will not be sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah, I just don't get Panera. I'm sorry. Every time I've tried it, it's expensive. It has no flavor. I just don't get it. The sandwiches are horrible. Anyway. So yeah, that's the Panera bread exemption. It's a weird exemption.
Okay, wait. So you mentioned Jersey Mike's. So I want to say something about this because, okay, weird fact about me that now everyone's going to be like, wow, what is wrong with you? I am not a foodie and I am very, very, very picky and I like plain food. And if I get go to somewhere like a Jersey Mike's and get a turkey sandwich, it's turkey and bread only. Okay. No mayonnaise, no mustard, no cheese. Sometimes there's bacon.
No
I love
Mike's way.
Like it's nothing. Like I'm like turkey bread, and they'll be like, no, turkey and bread. Okay. So my husband, and this is how I've always been. Oddly enough, I started like literally this week started craving mayonnaise and mustard. I went to Jersey Mike's and got a sandwich with mayonnaise and mustard. Nothing to do with the story. But anyway, my entire life, I'm in my 40s. My entire life, this is how I've eaten my sandwiches, if you can call them that. So my husband, being the frugal man that he is, would like, I think our first date, I ate a sandwich like that and he still dated me, but whatever. He figured out after we got married, he was like, what? I'm going to start like, if we go in, I'm just be like, oh, can you put some extra turkey on there? And then he'd be like, oh, can I just buy some bread separate? And they always let him. So he would basically pay like 50 cents for some bread and then like throw the extra turkey and be like, here's your sandwich. Okay. So technically we've done that at like Togo's and Jersey Mike's. We don't like, it's not really a thing. Eventually I got my own sandwich, but he would try it. Like and they would allow him to. So technically, all these years ago, they were selling their bread separate, and I know from experience. They did it at Subway too, but I don't want to give Subway a shout out because Subway's also disgusting, and I never want to eat there, but I have. Yeah. So.
Jersey Mike's all the way. Jersey Mike's is king.
I have two right by me now, so I'm like, yes, that's where I go.
It's always our go-to. I remember when I was little, I used to go to the original Jersey Mike's in New Jersey. But anyway, we're getting way off topic here. Not about this isn't Jersey Mike's podcast.
But they can sponsor us.
What's that?
They can sponsor us.
We'll take a Jersey Mike's sponsorship any day of the week. We'll barter. I'll barter for free sandwiches. I'll talk about Jersey Mike's if you give me free sandwiches. All right. So this other part of the bill is weird as well. When a restaurant is located and operates within a grocery establishment is defined in subdivision D of section 2502, and the grocery establishment employer employs the individuals working in the restaurant shall not be considered a fast food restaurant.
Okay.
I thought that was weird too. Why play? I'm trying to think of any places that have fast food.
Yeah, mostly like the grocery stores have Starbucks, but I don't know about a
Starbucks. Yeah,
I can think of like a fast food restaurant. Maybe in major cities there's big grocery stores. Maybe some Walmart. Oh, Walmart also has grocery stores and McDonald's.
Oh yeah, so if you work at the McDonald's and Walmart, you don't get $20 an hour.
Okay.
Interesting. So this new fast food council will be comprised of 2 representatives of the fast food restaurant industry, 2 representatives of fast food restaurant.
Wait, I'm sorry. It's a new fast food council?
I think it's the new fast food. This is what they're proposing.
Like, I mean, is there a new council or they're just for, no?
I think this is the new council that they're
new council. I never caught that before. Okay. So new government something.
Yeah,
okay.
The fast food council is hereby established. So that leads me to believe it hasn't been priorly in existence.
Okay.
It's been established. 2 representatives of the fast food restaurant industry, 2 representatives of the fast food restaurant franchisees or restaurant owners, 2 representatives of fast food restaurant employees, 2 representatives of advocates for fast food restaurant employees, likely union bosses, 1 unaffiliated member of the public who is not an owner, franchisee, officer, or employee in the fast food industry, who is not an employee or officer of a labor organization or a member of a labor organization representing fast food restaurant employees, and who has not received income from the fast food industry or any labor organization for a period of 2 years prior to appointment.
Jeez.
So That just proves my point that the advocates are going to be labor organizations. Could you imagine the one person who just gets appointed to this council and like, I have nothing to do with fast food. Like, why am I sitting on this council? But they probably get paid a pretty good amount. It says the governor gets to appoint all these people. Okay, so here's the part about the minimum wage. The hourly minimum wage for fast food restaurant employees shall be $20 per hour, effective April 1st, 2024.
Still take a joke.
What? Oh, it's an April Fool's joke that it actually went up to 20. Thereafter, the council may establish, pursuant to this subdivision, minimum wages for fast food restaurant employees that take effect on an annual basis beginning on January 1st, 2025. So this is the baseline. 20 is the base. So it only goes up from here. So if you think they're going to stop at $20 an hour, they're not stopping at $20 an hour. It's going to go up even more. Goes on to say the hourly minimum wage established by the council may increase on an annual basis by no more than the lesser of the following, rounded to the nearest 10 cents. 3.5%, which is a pretty big jump. That's usually the rate of raises that people get. The rate of change in the averages of most recent July 1st to June 30th inclusive period over the preceding July 1st to June 30th inclusive period for the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics non-seasonally adjusted United States Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. So whichever is the lesser of the two. So it's going to go up. So to all those people out there who think we're stopping at 20, think again. It's only going to go up from here. Next year, it'll probably go up 3.5% or whatever the CPI says. And yeah, away we go. This is just the start of your more expensive burger. A friend of mine actually texted me the other day and he's like, hey, I heard you're paying fast food people $20 an hour. And he said, enjoy those $25 burgers. I'm like, ain't that the truth, man? Can't even go to In-N-Out and enjoy that anymore. So there is this really helpful video by one of the best journalists in California, in my opinion. She's probably one of the most hard-hitting. I would say she actually puts people in Sacramento on notice, which a lot of journalists don't do. So Ashley Zavala of KCRA, she did a really good job. She put this video together. So we're going to take a little look at this video. We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about some other statistics after that. So let me pull this up. Here we go.
Look at some of the impacts, Ashley.
Edie, those impacts are felt most by the local business owners. When people hear about this new law, they might think it's giant corporations versus workers. But as we've been reporting, it's not that simple. Those caught in the middle of this are the franchisees, the local owners of one, a handful, or in some cases, hundreds of restaurants. They are the ones footing the bill for the new minimum wage on top of the other costs they have to pay. But tonight, those business owners are speaking out about being left out of the making of this law. Workers wrapping Whoppers are now making $20 an hour.
We employ about 6,000 people across the state, all the way up from Reading down to Bakersfield.
Harsh Guy is California.
Side note, I think the Whopper is severely underrated. Fantastic burger.
I don't eat at Burger King.
I haven't eaten Burger King in a while. My wife doesn't like Burger King, so I might have to wait until she goes and travels for work again or something, and then I'll treat myself to a nice double Whopper.
To a $25 Whopper.
Yeah, I'll go pay $25 for a Whopper.
California's largest operator of Burger King restaurants. His franchise group owns 200 total fast food restaurants on the West Coast, including some Taco Bell and Popeyes locations.
My dad started 25 years ago with one Burger King in San Jose, California. I used to run it himself, worked there open to close, started building restaurants, creating jobs. And then when I came out of high school, I started working with him and worked my way through his business through college as well, and eventually became a franchisee myself.
Grappling with California's new fast food labor law, Guy says his business is doing its best to have an open line of communication with workers.
I'll walk you over here real quick.
He showed us where he displays important signage of his workers' rights. It's in front of their workspace. He says with the new law, menu prices will likely rise at his restaurants and some closures are coming.
If you're listening on audio, you can't see what just happened. But what did you notice when what he was just standing in front of?
Oh, I didn't. So sorry.
It was a kiosk. There was not a person taking your order. It was a kiosk where the cashiers are. So you walk up and you blink, blink, blink.
Coming.
We did, however, close 8 restaurants last year because of profitability issues across the state, and we anticipate closing at least 6 more restaurants.
The consequences of the new law, something Guy tried to avoid. He says workers in his industry were an easy target for the powerful labor group that pushed it, the SEIU.
I think part of the reason is that we have tens of thousands of fast food restaurants across the state. Most of them, about 80% actually, are owned by single unit operators. So it's very difficult for people who own 1 restaurant or 2 restaurants to actually be able to have a voice and fight some of these things. And ultimately, they cut us out of the negotiations and the conversation. I learned on a Saturday morning that this was being signed on Monday morning, and when I found out about it and asked our brands and the lobbyists that have been working on their behalf how this happened, we were told that it happened that they were all under a non-disclosure agreement and that they weren't allowed to talk about it. There were some people in the room that were representing our best interest apparently, but there were no franchisees and no employers that were actually involved in those conversations.
So when you asked, how is this happening? They basically told you, we can't really say because we use non-disclosure agreements.
I was specifically told that a non-disclosure agreement was in place and that we weren't allowed to know about it.
That might be the most, I mean, there's a lot of weird things of how this bill passed, but that might be one of the weirdest and shadiest parts of how this passed. I mean,
so shady.
Aren't we, isn't it always the Democrats who are like, oh, democracy dies in the darkness.
Yes.
And this is quite literally, this is the darkness. This guy had no input. He couldn't contact anybody. He couldn't contact his representative saying, hey, I own how many restaurants? I'm really opposed to this. It'll hurt my business. They were just like, no, we can't talk about it. We can't tell you how this happened. We can't tell you where it came from. It just popped up. Here we are. NDA.
I don't see how that can even legally stand. I mean, again, I'm not an attorney, but I don't see how a bill in California where we have the rights to vote, for our elected leaders, and then they're supposed to have these meetings out in the open that we often can watch, can go see in person, and then they did this closed door thing, shut everyone out, and then actually signed non-disclosure agreements because they're like, no, you can't know anything about it. We're not going to answer your questions. I don't see how that's legal. I don't see how any of this could legally stand.
I don't really know either. I know Vince Vaughn introduced a bill to get rid of such NDAs, but it's astonishing to me that the party of we have to save democracy and democracy dies in the darkness and blah, blah, blah. We have to fight for democracy. And then they do things like this and they just completely push people, the people out, and they don't give them a voice in any of this process. Another interesting thing that I want to comment on before we keep watching. There's so many people on social media, on Reddit, on stuff you see reacting to this law. And their first response is, well, McDonald's and Burger King are like billions of dollars. So like they can afford it. Like they can afford to pay people $20 an hour. And they don't understand the business model that is these franchisees, right?
Yeah.
In-N-Out, for example, is owned by one family. They don't franchise. They own every single In-N-Out. Burger King, McDonald's, Taco Bell, a lot of places, they are franchise companies. Meaning, if you're a business owner and you're like, hey, I want to open a restaurant, but you don't want to come up with the menu and you don't want to come up with a concept and you want to do anything like that, but you're like, hey, I could buy the rights to open a Burger King or a McDonald's and they'll give me everything. As long as you pay for everything, they'll give you the equipment, they'll give you the training materials. Everything soup to nuts is done for you, right? So you don't have to do that process. Like that's the whole idea of this is like, you don't have to start your own restaurant. You could just basically buy a restaurant and run it yourself. You're still on the hook as a business owner individually. That is your individual business. So
Right.
while they think, oh, Burger King or McDonald's, they have billions of dollars and, you know, they make so much money. Think of it, it's still a mom and pop place for a lot of these places. A lot of these single franchisee owners, this is their business. And if they don't keep up and they don't balance their books and they don't make a profit and they can't keep up, because there's a lot of times they'll require you to buy equipment that has to be brought in because they're doing part of a special or whatever. It's tough. And I don't think people realize that. So all the people out there who are like saying, oh, all these corporations have billions of dollars, they can afford to pay people $20 an hour. That's not really how it works. They just don't understand the business model at all. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Let's keep watching.
Who is it, under your understanding, who was it that wanted the NDAs to be signed?
I honestly am not entirely sure. I was told at one point that the governor's office was requiring NDAs. I've also been told at other points that the SEIU, I would say it's the SEIU, just because of the fact that since then they've employed in more tactics. So they're trying to pass further legislation in the cities, San Jose, for example, and we are not able to sit down and actually talk to the people who are trying to pass these ordinances, nor are we able to discuss with the city council members as to what they're being asked to introduce.
You don't want to have to hire lobbyists and lawyers, but you have, right? I mean, recently because of this.
Yes.
I mean, is that the direction operators have to go in at this point, is to get more engaged with the legislature to push back against other groups, basically?
Absolutely. I mean, if I have to pay lobbyists to do this work on my behalf and speak on our behalf, because those are the people that are being led into these conversations, that's less money that could be going towards programs for my employees. That's less money that I could be paying my employees. That's less vacation time that we could be giving our team members and our workers. So we don't want to have to deal with that. We want to work hand in hand with our workers. We want to have sit downs with them directly, and we want to be able to make their lives better and improve their working conditions by sitting with them.
Why does SEIU keep putting workers who have been wronged at the forefront of this? I mean, how would you respond to what, they claim is an industry that might have this pervasiveness of mistreating its workers?
Yeah, look, I think that unfortunate issues happen in every industry, and they should absolutely be addressed head on. And we should be able to sit down with those employees and those workers and figure out the solutions to those problems ourselves.
How do you describe your relationship with your employees?
Our employees are the backbone of our business, and we're going to do everything in our power to improve our relationships with them. Over the last several years, we've implemented a lot of different things in our organization. For example, I have a couple of people in my office that constantly monitor breaks, time clock adjustments.
I want to skip ahead a little bit. There's something else she talked about that I wanted to go over. So
that.
The main take in speaking with the legislative secretary was, we're not in, we're not out, and the deciding factor seems to be the Fast Food Council. She did mention the governor's office.
So for those who are not watching, this is somebody who's a Handel's ice cream franchisee. Do you guys have Handel's up in Orange County?
We just got one like right near us last year.
Oh, okay.
So yes.
I know they're big down here in San Diego, so I guess
Okay.
they are franchising out. But yeah, she's talking about this because ice cream parlors are one of those things that falls kind of in a gray area. They don't have bread, but maybe ice cream is the exception.
I don't know, the
There's
cones.
office.
It's sweet
Maybe
bread,
the
right?
cones are bread. I don't know.
Appointed the Fast Food Council, and it's up to them to make the decision along with the Department of Industrial Relations.
Where do you go from here?
That's the $1 million question, probably literally, that we all want to know. Today's April 1st. The implementation of the bill is today. Whether or not we stay at 16 or go to the 20. And it's still as ambiguous as it was when I started this 5 months ago.
Okay. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Yeah, we'll do it. We'll finish it.
Really 3 years ago. This bill was first introduced back in 2021 on January 15th of that year. Again, in 2021, Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez introduced AB.
Shocker. If you don't remember, Lorena Gonzalez, notorious lackey for the unions in California. Hey, she's made a good career being a union lackey, union lapdog, as an assemblywoman, and now as the head of a big union as president. So she introduced this back in 2021. They keep talking about it.
257, it was called the Fast Recovery Act. A year later, Gonzalez would resign from the assembly to lead the California Labor Federation. Her bill would be taken over by Democratic Assemblyman from Pasadena, Chris Holden. The main concept of the bill was to establish a statewide council to set wages and working conditions for fast food workers. In September of that same year, the bill passed the state legislature and was signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom. The governor had this to say about the new law at the time.
I'm proud of the men and women of organized labor, particularly on Labor Day, for their extraordinary work over the course of decades to empower workers, to give them voice and choice, and to fight not just for wages, but better working conditions.
But the passage of that bill was just the start of what would become a complicated and controversial negotiation process. The fast food industry was heavily against it and immediately launched a statewide referendum. So in December of 2022, a judge put the law on hold as it went through the initiative process. By the next month, the referendum had enough signatures to let voters decide. The fast food industry raised $71.8 million to fight the law. That triggered a response by the state legislature and governor, who started to mount a fight to enact the law anyway. In 2023, a law known as AB 1228 was proposed to require fast food corporations to share workplace liability with their franchisees. There was also an effort by the governor and lawmakers to bring back the Industrial Welfare Commission. The goal of that was to get the commission to regulate the fast food industry anyway. Then came the big announcement day on September 11th of 2023, just over a year after the original bill was signed into law. The fast food industry, SEIU, and Governor Newsom's office and the legislature announced a deal. That deal ended efforts for the joint liability bill. It ended efforts to bring back the Industrial Welfare Commission. And in exchange, the fast food industry agreed to pull its referendum off the ballot that would have been on the ballot this year. They agreed to keep the Fast Food Council in place and raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour starting today. It was the third to last day of California's legislative session, so things had to move very fast after that deal. The Senate approved the bill the same day, with just one Republican voting no. The next day, it had a second hearing with no opposition represented.
Okay, we don't need more of the history.
I am so disgusted by this.
This is when she calls out Governor Newsom for Panera Bread.
That exempts bakeries, essentially places that sell and bake bread on site. So carving out essentially Panera and Boudin. I wonder, why in the agreement did you all decide that those workers should not be within the umbrella of this?
That's part of the sausage making. That was part of 257, the original bill. And we went back and forth, and there was part of the negotiation. It's the nature of negotiation.
Part of the
But what part of it makes sense?
Part of the sausage making. That's what a slimy answer of like, well, I'm not going to tell you why. I'm just going to tell you it's part of the sausage making. You don't understand, Ashley. We're not going to tell you why Panera Bread gets an exemption. We all know why Panera Bread got an exemption, but all right.
Wouldn't you be like, if you were a Panera Bread employee, wouldn't you be like, why don't I deserve, like, if this is all about a living wage and people need to make more money, how come I don't deserve this raise, this minimum wage? And making bread is a lot of work. Like,
it's
I'm
hard
still confused about, like, I would think that those would be the first people to get this raise, because it's like, you're making bread. You're not just like standing there flipping burgers. No offense to anyone flipping burgers. Making bread is a lot of time, hands-on. Like, there's like timing involved. It requires
an acquired skill. I can't make bread. I love to cook. I can't make bread. I can't bake anything unless it comes out of a box with easy instructions. All right, let's talk about So this has all gone into place. We got a little background about how this came into being, the shadiness, the backdoor deals, the backroom deals, all that stuff. I want to talk a little bit about the response of the industry of what's going to happen. You had sent me some stuff in terms of, oh, there's another thing I really want to talk about really quickly. Chris Holden, you had pointed this out, and again, follow the money. SEIU, who they mentioned in that past video. So SEIU, United Healthcare Workers, donated $7,200 to Chris Holden. SEIU, again, United Healthcare Workers donated $2,500. Again, United Healthcare Workers donated $19,400 to Chris Holden.
Stopped counting how much money from 21 to 22 was donated to him from labor unions when I hit like 160,000 for that year.
SEIU local 2015 state PAC, 9,700. United Food and Commercial Workers Union local 770 PAC donated 2,500. So you can see, I mean, follow the money. It makes sense why American Beverage Association California donated $1,000. So yeah, you can see why would he support a bill like this? Well, because he gets a lot of money from unions who support this bill. So this is from the Restaurant Realty Company. This is their outlook for 2023 and 2024. They talked about what they're going to be facing in these next coming years. And it goes on to say, California restaurant industry, as always, is continuing to be challenging. It's a good way to sum it up if you're a restaurant owner. In other words, if they increase their menu prices too aggressively, they'll price their customers out of the market as the customer is demanding price value. In 2023, all food prices have increased at least 5.9%. So this is on top of the fact that there's inflation, operating costs are going up, everything's starting to cost more, and then you throw on top of it this $20 an hour, it's starting to look a little harder to run a restaurant. Additionally, the economy is plagued with high interest rates that have increased over 5 points in the past 12 months. This makes it tough for restaurant buyers to obtain reasonable interest rate loans for purchases, as well as for operators who want to borrow funds to do the necessary remodeling if their plans are required. So this is a survey they took. Only 16% of the nation's restaurants expect profits to increase in 2023, with 50% bracing to make less money than they did the year because of soaring expenses. Not a good outlook. Usually that's not a good, I think restaurant spending is a good economic indicator of how well your economy is doing, because if restaurants are booming, what does that tell you? People have disposable income, they're going out more, they're not being so frugal and tightening the purse strings. So if the restaurant industry is expecting that they're not going to make money, that's not usually a good sign. The survey also designated a third inflationary culprit to add to the big two of labor and food costs, energy expenses. The research revealed that operators are adjusting to the tougher cost environment in dramatic fashion. More than a third, for instance, have delayed expansion, and 13% have stopped using third-party delivery services. Roughly 9 out of 10 operator respondents describe soaring food and labor costs as significant challenges for the next 12 months. 87% of U.S. restaurants have raised menu prices. 32% are now closing on days they were formerly open. 48% have trimmed hours on days when they are open. 38% have postponed planned development because of high interest rates. That's not a good outlook for restaurants. That sounds like...
It sounds horrible.
It sounds really bad. Doesn't sound like they're expanding. Doesn't sound like they're hiring. Sounds like they are in a retraction mode right now. They are bracing for impact in restaurant land. This is from Nation's Restaurant News. El Pollo Loco Holdings is looking to technology in the form of kiosks. That's why I pointed out the kiosks when you were looking at the video. They were showing the cashier. There's no cashier at that guy's Burger King. It's just a kiosk now. And kitchen equipment to offset increased labor expenses as California readies for quick service wage hikes to $20 an hour on April 1st. Maria Hollandsworth, the interim CEO, President and Chief Operating Officer, who was being succeeded by Liz Williams, said kiosks are also being added to El Pollo Loco units as well. Quote, our customers will learn quickly and adapt very easily, as well as if we have multiple kiosks in the restaurants. That's the one thing we've learned. It's really helped us with being efficient when it comes to our customers, putting in their orders, as well as our team members preparing the orders for our customers. We're leveraging third-party data and really scrutinizing all costs to help offset expected incremental labor costs from upcoming legislative changes. So someone goes on to say, we're still comfortable with that range of a third to half of that of California minimum wage impact will be offset by labor savings. And honestly, the rest of it, we're working on taking some pricing. So El Pollo Loco, and this is what people have been saying, is once they raise the minimum wage, say hello to kiosks and robots. And yeah, that's what's already happening. I think a lot of restaurants are going to start. You're going to start seeing a lot of kiosks in a lot of these fast food places. I think you already are seeing a lot of kiosks. They're much more affordable than they used to be. So a follower of mine, or a follower, said they're $3,000 to $5,000. He messaged me on Instagram and said they're only like $3,000 to $5,000. Which, when you think about it, a kiosk is $3,000 to $5,000 as opposed to paying someone $20 minimum wage. And this is taking a step back. This is the impact that a lot of politicians with pie in the sky utopia ideas think this is great, and it's protecting union workers. It's, oh, this is so good for everybody. Like, everyone's going to make $20 an hour minimum wage. How many people are going to get laid off or to have their hours cut just because of this law going into effect? Like, they're going to figure out, like, business owners will look at their books, they'll look at it and say, how do we cut costs? Oh, well, if we get rid of, instead of having 4 cashiers working all day long, we'll cut all those cashiers and we'll have kiosks. Now we don't have to pay anybody. And those kiosks work. They show up to work every day, 24/7. They don't care. They don't ask for vacation. They never have a sick day. They never call out because they got in a fight with their boyfriend or something.
Less workers' comp, insurance.
Less workers' comp, insurance, taxes, all of that stuff. Like, it's savings on top of savings on top of savings. So it makes sense. And I would expect a lot of these fast food places, like, the market's going to react, and it's not going to react the way these politicians think. It's going to react in the complete opposite way, which is it's going to be more automated. It's going to be a lot more technology. They're probably going to figure out how to make a lot of this stuff with machines. They'll press a button. That button will then send something to a machine in the back that will make your order. And really, the only person who has to do it is just, they have to take it out and bring it to you. And at a certain point, they'll probably figure out how to get rid of that person too.
Oh, I'm sure. Which, okay, so on the flip side, then there's possible jobs in technology there for, the people making that. But unfortunately, that's probably not the fast food worker. And fast food workers historically were mostly high school and college age kids. Now, I know that that's not the case anymore, but that was. And so now those, I've talked to you about my 16-year-old daughter. She wants a job. I'm not making her get a job right now. She wants a job, and she's applied at so many fast food places, and they tell her, we're not hiring, we're laying off. We're not hiring, we're laying off. We're not hiring anyone below the age of 18. Like, I had a job at a frozen yogurt place when I was like 15, and now you can't. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, there's an article I want to discuss in a little bit about that. There is this video from Fox Business of a guy who has stuff in California and Nevada. I want to watch real quick. It's only 2 minutes long, so we'll check this out. Let's see. Too many tabs open. That's the problem. Way too many tabs. And then I got to go through and search for them, and I can't find it anymore. Where is it? Come on, where are you? Is it this one? No. Is it this one? No. There we go.
Out, it's $20 per hour minimum wage for fast food workers. Joining me now is Alec Johnson. He operates 5 Auntie Anne's and 5 Cinnabon locations in San Francisco. Alex, can you put a number together and tell us how much this new rule would cost your business?
Yeah, across my 10 locations, the increase in the wage rate is going to cost me $470,000, so just about $50,000 per location.
Are you going to cut any positions because of this?
We're, everything's on the table right now. I think immediately what we're doing, though, is raising prices. Something that I really don't want to do. We've had to raise prices several times over the past couple of years because of the COVID-induced inflation. And we're seeing our sales decline. We're seeing traffic decline. So it's really not a good time to have to do this. But we're not backfilling positions. So as people move on in their careers, our employees, we're not refilling those positions. And ultimately myself, I'm not growing anymore in this state. I'm not expanding any new locations. I've actually am doing a different franchise in Nevada, and that's where I'm taking those new jobs versus California.
Why we're not surprised. Well, would I be right in saying that under this new rule, someone, a teenager, 17, 18 years old, maybe 16 years old, a counterhand would earn over $30,000?
That sounds like such a British thing to say. A counterhand. I've never heard
It is
that
a
term
British thing to say.
There's a counterhand. A counterhand.
A year? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct.
So they could earn $40,000 a year. 16 years old, serving burgers across the counter, 40 grand.
Yeah, certainly. We know that with the new fast food council too that was established under this law, that they have the power to take the wage even higher. I believe they're already in talks to do so this January.
When they know the impact on the area, the business, and employment, why would they do that? Is it pure politics?
You know, I don't know. All I know is that, my business, we have a very finite set of economic conditions that need to be met for us to make money. And I certainly, this bill has cast doubt onto whether we can continue in this state. And like I said, I've already started to, invest in the neighboring state of Nevada, where there just isn't so much regulation. There isn't so many different types of people telling you how to run your business.
Alex, may I suggest you make a real change and go to Naples, Florida? It's a wide open place and it's full of money and it's a great place to do business. I just a suggestion.
Yeah. Just a suggestion. He's going to be one of, how many people are going to go away. How many fast food franchisees are going to leave this state? And again, this is the response that politicians who've never picked up an economics book, they just don't seem to understand that you do this, business owners leave, they take the jobs with them, they close down restaurants. Like he said, people leave, they're not backfilling these positions. So the job pool is actually getting smaller. So for as much as SEIU says they're for workers' rights and protecting workers, they've probably done more harm to workers right now in California by decreasing the labor pool and the availability of these jobs overall. And they're going to say, well, why are there no jobs for any of us anymore? Well, because the union that you supported pushed this law through and scared everyone away. And it's just unsustainable. I don't blame the guy. Go move your business somewhere else.
Well, right. And then we already know people are leaving California, which means other states are expanding. So that, there's going to be demand for fast food. So it's great investment opportunity. And yeah, I don't know if you wanted to bring this up yet, but California is already we have the highest unemployment rate we've talked about it before, but in the country, it's only going to get worse. Yeah. And then these laborers are trying to take over the unions. The labor unions trying to take everything over. And I feel like they're pushing more people out. Like you just mentioned, they're supposed to be for workers, but now there's less workers. And it just goes to show you that these politicians and labor unions have got to just take a seat. They're ruining things for people.
Just take a time out. Take a time out for like 10 years and don't do anything and see how much. It's almost like, honestly, if these politicians and labor unions just stop doing stuff for 10 years, California might fix itself. Like that.
I agree. It would start to heal.
Just stop doing stuff. Like you're making things worse. So there's this other article. I didn't even think about this. Did you know this has an impact on cafeteria workers at public schools?
Well, I didn't know till you put that article in the notes.
Until I put it in the notes. It says, lost in the hubbub. This is from Fortune magazine. Lost in the hubbub surrounding California's new $20 per hour minimum wage for fast food workers is how that raise could impact public schools. forcing districts to compete with the likes of McDonald's and Wendy's for cafeteria workers amid a state budget crunch. So the state has effectively shot itself in the foot because now public education has to pay cafeteria workers $20 an hour. And a lot of these districts don't have the money or the revenue to pay these cafeteria workers $20 an hour. So where do they go get the money? And the state's already facing a $73 billion deficit.
Right.
So what do we do? We just don't have cafeteria workers anymore. We just don't have people who are lunch ladies who are going to be serving any food anymore. I guess they didn't think about that. I'm surprised they didn't write that exemption in, that public schools or government schools don't have to pay $20 an hour, which would look pretty bad if they were like, no, if you work at a cafeteria for a public school, you don't get $20 a minute, $20 an hour. The article goes on to say, demand is projected to fuel an increase of over more than 70 million extra meals in California schools this year compared to 2018, according to the State Department of Education. It's because we are the first state to guarantee free meals for all students, regardless of the family's income. But these jobs typically have lots of turnover and are harder to fill. The minimum wage boost for fast food workers could make them even more difficult. Quote, they are all very worried about it. Most are saying they anticipate it will be harder and harder to hire employees. President of the California School Nutrition Association. Some districts are limited what they can do. In the Linwood Unified School District in Los Angeles County, the starting salary for food service workers is $17.70 per hour. It maxes out at $21.51 per hour, which, as we already know, by January next year, that might be the new requirement. According to Gretchen Jansen, the district's assistant superintendent of business services, she said these workers only work 3 hours per day, meaning they aren't eligible for health benefits. Jansen says the district is waiting to see how employees react, adding, quote, we just don't have the increase in revenue to be able to provide additional funding for staff. So there's something they didn't look over while they were carving out an exemption for Panera Bread. Cafeteria workers. And that'll be fun trying to figure that. Any thoughts on the cafeteria workers?
No thoughts.
Thoughts?
It's like this bill, as much as I don't agree with it, they're screwing over a lot of people in the process too.
It just seems bad all around.
Yeah.
And I think people will say, oh, well, you don't think people deserve $20 an hour? You don't think that's where it, like, you don't think people should make a livable wage? I'm going to read this last article before we wrap up for the night. It's from Forbes magazine. It's called Raising the Minimum Wage Hurts the Most at Disadvantage. Less than 2% of the workforce and only about 9% of teenage workers work at or below minimum wage. About a quarter of minimum wage workers are ages 16 to 19, with younger employees not even counted in the labor statistics. Another quarter of those minimum wage are under 25. This means that a full 50% of those working for minimum wage are younger than 25. These minimum wage workers typically live with their parents and many have middle-class lifestyles. While their earnings may be small, their average family income is over $53,000 per year. To understand why minimum wage hurts the most at disadvantage, you must imagine the person who is having trouble getting hired at a job paying $7 an hour or higher. They may not have had a job ever or have had only one in the past year. Their communication skills may not be adequate, or they may not be fluent in the language. They may not be finished basic schooling. They may not have learned to follow instructions, show up on time, or diligently complete tasks they don't like. And it goes on to talk about setting the minimum wage higher at $15 per hour sets the beginning of the economic ladder 15 feet off the ground. If some teens are unemployable at $7.25 per hour, think how discouraging and frustrating $15 per hour will feel. For an employer, the alternative to a minimum wage job isn't a higher paying job. The alternative to a minimum wage job is outsourcing or automation, which we talked about. It'll be kiosks and more machines. With technology today, both are possible. The consensus among economists is that 1 to 2% of entry-level jobs are lost for every 10% increase in the minimum wage. So imagine jumping from 16 to 20. Raising the minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 could mean a reduction in entry-level jobs of 11 to 21%. These estimates would suggest that between 1.8 and 3.5 million jobs will be lost. These jobs won't show up on unemployment statistics. You need to have a job. You would need to have had a job before your attempts to find one are counted as being unemployed.
Interesting.
So, I think this is a good way to talk, or maybe wrap this whole episode up before we finish for the night. There are, like I said, people are going to say, oh, you don't think these people deserve $20 minimum wage. There's an interesting theory out there that minimum wage does end up hurting the disadvantaged, like this article says, because it takes away the ability of someone to negotiate with the employer, and it kind of creates a barrier. And I think, like with your story with your daughter, right now, paying $20 an hour to a young teenager for a business owner who they may not have any job experience might go, I'm not going to give that person $20 an hour. It doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah,
like they don't have any work experience. But if there's someone who is fresh or new, like when you and I were young and we worked at whatever place that we could, and the minimum wage was like $5 an hour or something, like, yeah, they were happy to pay teenagers $5 an hour to go work at an ice cream shop or paint fences or something like that. And you need that